Hi, everyone. This is Ashley Gronewald with Hunter Row Real Estate, and I am joined by Lis Malcom, and she is a music teacher and the owner of Malcom Music Studio. And she actually I got to work with her and her husband and her family as they have bought and sold homes. So I got the privilege of getting to know them really well and see these pianos, like the lovely one she has here in the background, get moved from house to house. So I just asked if you would join us today and share with us just what the importance of music is for kids, and then kind of where it came, your journey into music, and then maybe even how parents can get involved in music for their kids at all different ages. So is there anything else you'd like to share, Lis, about who you are and your family? And
well, I am very thankful for the house that you helped us find because it has a perfect music studio for me. So forever grateful to you, Ashley, for that.
Yeah. Very good. And then you have one little one at home.
Two, actually. So two little ones. Yes, a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. And they keep me busy, but they're a lot of fun. So
that's awesome. Very cool. Yeah. So before we jump in, tell us where your love for music came from and how did you journey along in this music venture?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family of musicians. My mom is a professional violin teacher, and my dad is a professional violist in the North Carolina Symphony. So I heard music from infancy. It was just something that was a part of my life from day one. And there's 4 girls in my family, and all of us took music lessons. It was like just something that we did, you know. My parents were musicians, and we were going to take music lessons and study and learn music. And I'm the only one that actually ended up going into music professionally, though my other sisters do love music. For me, I was just destined to be a musician, and I love it.
That makes sense that you would have that passion from all that exposure as a little one. So that's awesome. So you've started this music studio where you are teaching. Is it only kids, or do you teach adults as well?
I offer it to any age and level. At this point, I don't currently have any adults. It's a lot of elementary school students. You know, a lot of parents decide, oh, you know, this is a great time for my child to start lessons. And so I do have a lot of elementary and some middle schoolers and some high school students as well.
Awesome. And then what specifically do you teach? Is it a couple different instruments? Is it just piano?
Great question. Yeah. So I teach primarily piano. I also do teach violin, though I think at this point right now I have like 1 or 2 students. Most people, you know, violin is not for the faint of heart. So you got to deal with a lot of different elements when you're playing it. It's a beautiful instrument to play, though I do find that piano tends to be the most popular instrument that I've been teaching lately. So, and I love teaching both, but it's a great foundation instrument to start on anyway. So
that's so good to hear, because I remember when my brother, he may have been like 3. My parents had him in violin lessons. So we have really cute, a couple small, videos of him really young playing the violin, but he definitely has no musical interest at this point and, didn't follow through with that. But that is interesting to know that that's a difficult instrument, and that piano is a good foundational instrument that you could build off of. So if you want a musical background for your child, sounds like let them add instruments. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. And it seems like that's what you often find people starting with piano, and clearly that's probably the reason why. So what do you think is the importance of music for kids? Clearly you're passionate about it. You're teaching other kids. I'm sure you'll have your little ones at some point involved as well. So why? What's the importance of it?
Well, there's a lot of academic research out there, stating all the importances of music and the benefits. From my own perspective as a second-generation musician, I will say it teaches you a lot of really good life skills, discipline being one of them, having to sit down and practice. And, not everyone always wants to sit down and practice. That's okay. That's just it's something as a musician, in order to improve your skill, that's part of the process of being a musician and taking music lessons. But it does teach you to, prioritize that in your schedule and to have a good work ethic and discipline. And so that's just a practical element that you really learn as a musician and taking music lessons. Another is it's a great creative outlet. So, you can express yourself. Some students, they may have a hard time in school or struggle in other areas, but music is just a really great way to express themselves and to be creative and to, find music that they really connect with. Yeah. And then also on a more academic kind of angle, music has a lot of math in it. Now, I am not a math person. So when I say this, the math in music is actually, it makes sense to me. So simple math are you familiar with music? Did you take music lessons, Ashley, growing up, or?
These are good questions. I did singing lessons for 8 years and then did flute in school. I guess that would be middle school when you start adding the instrument and band. And then I am very musically minded, probably from the math perspective. So I teach group fitness and I teach to the beat and cannot not teach to the beat. And then in dancing, I lead my husband in dancing, which he hates because I want to be on the 8 count and the upbeat and all that. So I have it there, but have never been probably really well trained in it to know exactly. I just can hear things and know things are happening in the music that are starting points and ending points, but I don't have the right language for it.
So are you familiar, if I were to say time signature in music, would that be something that would ring a bell?
No.
So time signature has to do with a number of counts in each measure, which is a grouping of, we group music into different sections. So a very common time signature would be 4/4. So meaning that there's 4 beats in each measure. So when we're talking about time signature with little kids, we're in essence doing math because we're adding the number of counts in each measure to create 4. And it's really fun to see the kids, doing that math as, really young, at a really young age, and counting, because I do have my students count all the time. Now, they are not always happy about counting all the time, but we do it anyway. And so, just that physical counting and thinking of just the basic rhythm, like quarter notes are 1 beat, half notes are 2 beats. And we'll do in their music writing books, we'll do musical math where we're adding the different rhythmic values together. So just, little things like that. It's just a really great skill that they're learning in their music lessons.
That's the part I'm more interested in. I mean, like you said, it's not your favorite part because you have more of the creative side of your brain functioning. Whereas for me, I like the creative piece, but the math part is more dominating. So what's awesome about that is that right or left brain dominant children can get exposure to the creative side and the mathematical, logical side. And even just like when you said that, like I know that there's 8 counts to what I'm doing in music. Like I need it to be on the 8 count. So when instructors teach 10 more, I'm like, but there's only 8 beats to this phrase or whatever it's called. So that's funny because it definitely, I hear it and I know, but I don't have words for what's happening. So
exactly. Well, and you sense it. And I think there's a lot of students out there that they, especially early on, they may not understand why, but they just instinctively feel that rhythm. And so you have a natural rhythmic instinct, which is wonderful.
It drives my husband crazy when we're dancing and I'm like, and ready, go. And he's like, stop it, So when do you recommend children getting started?
That's a great question. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. It really depends on the child. The big thing is you want to make sure that they are ready and they're motivated to do lessons. Because if you kind of drag them kicking and screaming into music lessons, The child's not going to be happy. You, the parent, aren't going to be happy. And the teacher's going to, have a very adventurous lesson as well. So, keeping it very positive, I'd say, and making sure that it's something that your child is ready for. Typically, second and third grade, fourth grade as well, those are all great ages to start. Now, some children are ready as early as kindergarten, and some may not be ready until sixth grade. And, there are those exceptions. So I'd say typically, second, third, fourth grade is a great age to start.
That's so good, because I see that even with me trying to teach Ellie to read, I became this Nazi of, we're going to read every day, 15 minutes, and I'm working through this workbook. And to the point where she was fighting me, I was frustrated. And so I finally had to say, I'm putting it away. Like, she doesn't want to do this. It's not building our relationship. It's only causing frustration. So I think what you're saying is a really good point, probably in other things, not just music, but just waiting for your child to actually be ready, or showing interest, and them having some buy-in into it. So
exactly. It's so important, because you want to keep it. You want music to be, especially as a music teacher, it's so important that music is positive for that child, that their first connection and association with it is not like, oh, well, my mom is making me do this, So that to me is huge. And, having a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old and being a music teacher, it's my question is, okay, well, when do I start my children? And I have not given them any structured, formal music education at all. I just let, whenever my 3-year-old wants to play, he sits down and he plays, and he'll say, I'd like a lesson, Mama. And his lesson consists of him sitting and playing on the piano. And I'm like, do you want me to tell you, any specifics? We can maybe talk about hand position. He's like, no, Mama, I just want to play. So, and at this point, that's what I let him do.
Right. So. Exactly. I think that's so important. Yeah. To keep it positive and something they want to do and look forward to, rather than just something they dread. But like you said, which I love, it like instills discipline in them, but not if you are the one forcing it on them. So it's probably a balance between the two.
Yeah.
And so you kind of answered this question already. What type of music do you suggest for kids getting started? So it sounds like piano. If that's not an option, is there a second instrument or style that you recommend?
Well, there's also something maybe I should mention as well. So if you do want to start your child off on some music exposure, maybe not necessarily formal lessons, Music Garden is a really great. Are you familiar? Have you heard of Music Garden? It's similar to Kinder Music.
Okay.
And so, in essence, you can start Music Garden as young as a newborn. So you can you bring your baby in, and it's how Music Garden is you're sitting in a circle, and there's an instructor who leads the class, and then you can have 3 or 4 moms, and then they each have their child with them. And when they're a baby, you're bringing in your baby, and you're rocking and you're singing songs. And so your child is exposed to music as young as, you can even go in as a pregnant mom, and if you want to expose your child in utero to music. So it's really incredible. There's also bouncing songs. So we have songs to, and all of these songs are exposing your child to music. As they get older, you're going to have to practice clapping to music or tapping to music. And there's different. Sometimes we'll tap, sometimes we'll clap. We might tap our head. There's just different ways that you are exposing them to music, but also learning, oh, these are my hands. I'm clapping my hands, or I'm clapping my legs. So they're learning just basic skills as well. As the children get older, there's the classes change. There's maybe dancing. You're going to dance to the music. You may have creative play. You may go outside into nature and get sticks and twigs and create a story about those things. So you're including music, but it's also a very creative kind of outlet. And it's a really great way to expose your children who may not want to sit down and have a, very structured type of music lesson.
And are you finding that if a child at a young age can hear a rhythm or like clap on the beat, like because I hear that so heavily, I was just curious with my little ones who's 4 and 2, like when we listen to music, if they can clap to the beat or tap to it or just even move their body to it. Do you find that there's a connection to a musical interest later if they have that at a young age?
Having that good sense of rhythm, not every kid is innately like feels that rhythm, but the ones that do, I find you sense it as they're playing because they feel the beat in their body. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when they're thinking about the half notes and the quarter notes, I sense that it's just instinctively a part of them as a person. And clapping and tapping those rhythms is a great way to kind of develop that. So maybe a child instinctively has that. Maybe they don't as much, but you can help develop that by, you know, tapping and dancing and moving to the beat, as well as, you know, down the road in music lessons, counting out loud, which I have my students do, as I mentioned earlier. So.
And it's funny, in my class, it's called Cycle Beat because we ride to the beat of the music. I'll ask people, who can hear the beats in the music? And I mean, there's a good portion of people that can, but there's definitely always a percentage of them that they're like, can't hear it. So they'll just follow watching visually my leg cadence versus hearing it for themselves. Because I try and get them to close their eyes and hear it to replicate the speed of the music to their legs. So anyway, I do some of that in class because I think it's so interesting how music, and I always say music is really motivating for lots of reasons, but also an exercise just by pushing with the music when it pushes and then slowing down when the music, or, you know, the different things that the music creates. So it's fun to me.
I think that's very cool.
Yeah. So what are some other influences and exposures to music you recommend? So you're saying there's some really good opportunities just with little kids, even if you're pregnant, exposing them to music. Is there other things that you would suggest if, as a parent, you're thinking, I really want my kids to be exposed to this? Not necessarily going to force them to do lessons, but get them musically exposed and acclimated so that they can make that choice later if this is something that they would want to pursue.
Yes, kind of what you're mentioning, listening to music and, you know, hearing it with a workout. I say going to concerts, and I know right now we're kind of getting out of our global pandemic, but down the road when we can go to a big concert hall and listen to the North Carolina Symphony play, that's a great exposure to music. Or going and hearing an opera. Now, operas are long, maybe 3 or 4 hours. So I'm just gonna say, make sure your child is old enough to be able to sit through an opera. Ballets, those are really fun because you're visually seeing the dance and the moving to the music, which is just, it's beautiful and it's inspirational. I also love Broadway musicals. You're going to be hearing lots of different kinds of music, and you see the acting and the singing and the dancing, and you hear the music. So you're combining a lot of those elements. Those, I have to say, Broadway musicals are some of the most enjoyable things to go to. Have you gone to?
Yeah, I grew up going to lots and lots of plays. That's what our family did. And so recently, Ellie and I have been listening to Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Phantom of the Opera, Wicked. And it's so funny. We get in the car and she says, can we listen to the song that goes dun, 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 dun? Like that's what and I'm like, okay, Phantom of the Opera is what you're asking for. And she is so fascinated by it. And I was asking Jed, like, how early do you think we can take her to see Phantom of the Opera? Because it could be a little scary for her, but she's very interested in it. And even just the lyrics, she's very curious about it. So I do think that gave me a lot of interest as a young child being exposed to Broadway for sure.
Oh, it's so much fun. And there's different styles out there. You know, you can hear a more like, I'm trying to think of one in particular, like Oliver, I think that's going to be a little bit more, I don't want to say old fashioned, but it's not going to be quite as hip and modern as maybe Wicked would be. So just depending on what kind of style you want, you can hear all different kinds of Broadway musicals and really be exposed to different kinds of music, which is really cool.
Yes, for sure. So a lot of the people probably listening are busy moms, and the thought of adding one more thing to their schedule of a music lesson, do you have any thoughts on how do we add that in? Would you recommend even maybe in the fall, they're doing maybe a sport, whether it's gymnastics or soccer, and then the spring they focus in on a musical type of extracurricular? Do you have any thoughts on how do we add that in to just, one more thing on, the plate?
That's a great question, because these days everyone is so busy and kids are doing so many different activities. I think back in the day, I growing up, I didn't do a ton of activities. I did a few, but I think these days kids are doing so much. And so It is hard to kind of juggle all of those activities and to know what to do and which ones to pick and choose from. The one good thing about music lessons is they're probably one of the least intensive activities to do. So sports, you're probably going multiple times a week. I don't know much about sports, but I'm assuming from what I've heard, you usually go multiple times a week. With music lessons, you're going once a week to your music lesson, and then once a year, there's a recital. So it's actually really pretty minimal as far as a driving commitment. Now, the commitment does come into play as far as the practicing and the discipline to do that. But that's when, you want your child to be ready and say, hey, I'm willing to take this on and I'm excited. I want to sit down and practice. When my students are just starting out and they're working on, their beginner books, typically practice is not all that much. I will tell them the main goal is to practice 5 days. And I say 5 different days because sometimes what happens is they'll say, Miss Liz, I was really busy this week. And so I practiced 3 times on Monday, and then I practiced 2 times on Tuesday. So I still got my 5 days. But I had to explain to them it has to be 5 different days, like brushing your teeth. You don't make up for brushing your teeth by brushing them like 100 times one day and then not for a month. So we've had that discussion about, keeping it as a daily practice. But it doesn't necessarily have to be for 30 minutes. Some students early on may only need 5 minutes to cover the material. So it's the main thing is just the discipline of sitting down and having it be part of their daily activities. And then as they get more advanced, maybe 10, 15 minutes, maybe up to 30 as they get more advanced. Sometimes it just depends on the child and how long it takes them to get through the material. But it's really not as much of a time commitment as I think sometimes we think it is.
And would you say if I wanted Ellie to be in piano lessons, for example, would it be a non-negotiable that you need to have access to a piano in your home to be able to successfully make that worth it?
That is a very good question. I'd say typically, yes, it's very helpful to have some sort of digital or acoustic piano in your house. I have had some students that haven't had a piano the first month of lessons, but they were in the midst of getting that piano. So, I worked with them and there's ways you can actually practice without a piano. You can tap the rhythm on your lap. You can point and say the finger numbers or the counts. And there's ways you can practice the rhythmic element, though you're not necessarily practicing the sound element because you don't have the piano. So it's okay for a short amount of time, but down the road to develop that technique and that good hand position, that is an important element to have in place.
It sounds like having just a keyboard, which isn't as big of an expense or commitment, could work as well. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. And then what are you seeing improvement-wise in children that are exposed to music? Do you have anything to share about, I'm curious, just what the correlation between focus, discipline, like you talked about, doing better in school, dealing with emotion. I would think all of those could be positive attributes that come from music.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. All of those are wonderful attributes. And I think especially in a global pandemic, leading up to, I have a recital coming up Friday, actually. It's a virtual recital I'm doing with students. But leading up to the recital, I asked students what they loved most about music and wanted to hear their thoughts. And many of them talked about how music soothed them when they were angry or it calmed them when they were upset. And I think going through a global pandemic where you're not seeing friends as much, or there's just so much going on. Everyone's going through this, and you have music to fall back on as an outlet to kind of soothe your soul. And it's really neat to see how students have been able to go to music to help them for that. Also, the confidence that students gain when they work on a piece for the recital and perform for people, and stand up there and have to carry themselves with poise and confidence, even if maybe they don't feel that way inside. We always talk about, you're acting up there, you're going up on the stage, you're walking up, you have to carry yourself with confidence. And it's amazing to see students who may not feel that way, they get up there and they do such a great job. So that skill that they develop.
That's awesome. So it sounds like it can be such a great outlet for emotion and just dealing with whatever life is throwing at you, but also a confident building tool that prepares you for job interviews, school, all these different things that the future holds. So that's so awesome. So if someone was interested after listening to this and said, gosh, I want to get my child enrolled with Liz, are you taking openings? What does that look like? People come to your house, right, into your studio to do lessons. So share a little bit with us about that.
Yeah, so right now I only have very, very few openings. Most of my students have pre-registered again for the fall. Though if there are openings, I do have a wait list, and I'm always happy to, fill students in those openings that do happen down the road. Sometimes something will pop up at the last minute. So I'm always happy to receive calls, and if I don't have openings, I also have wonderful teachers that I can also recommend who are fantastic. So
awesome. And what is the best way to get in touch with you? If someone listened and did want to reach out to you, where should they connect with you?
So email is a great way. I have email at malcommusicstudio@gmail.com. And there's also, I have a studio Facebook page, so you can check out photos and videos of students and kind of see how we do music lessons. And you can also message directly from the Facebook page as well.
So I have two really quick last questions. First, are they group lessons or are they individual, or both? Do you do both?
I do both. I say primarily my lessons are small group classes. So typically 3 to 4 students, and we meet together and we work on all different elements together. We do have one-on-one time. We perform for each other. We play games. It's a very interactive and engaging kind of style.
I love that. And then my last question is just knowing your husband a little bit from helping you guys through the process of buying and selling. Is Chad musically interested, or is he like, this is your thing, Liz?
No, he also has taught music lessons. So when I met him, we were introduced by a mutual friend because we were both teaching music lessons. So yes, small world, but yes, that's something that he is also passionate about. And so that's fun. We can share that together.
That is awesome to share that together. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much. I feel like I was really curious, should I get Ellie started? But it sounds like I really need to let her show interest. She goes to her grandma's house and plays on her piano there, but it's kind of probably a little bit like your son at 3, just like, Mom, I don't need any instruction. I just want to play. So I'll keep watching for those cues that say it might be time to get her enrolled in something like that. So, well, thank you so much. If anyone does have questions, reach out to Liz. I know she'd be happy to connect you or answer some of your questions for you. So thanks again. And I'll see everyone next week. You're welcome. See you.